Hi, welcome back to Analyzing with Grace. I'm Gabby Grace, and today we are taking a different turn on our little film analyzation journey. We're going down a different fork in the road towards the world of nonfiction. We are looking at a historical documentary called The Fog of War. It was released in 2003, but it's a historical documentary which focuses on our interviewee, who is Robert McNamara. He was the U.S. Secretary of Defense for 7 years, which is kind of crazy. He did it in like the 60s, but we have a bunch of different layers of footage because this is a historical documentary. It starts off with like archival footage is the term for it. You get it from like databases and things like that. It's like old footage from like it's in the archive. So there's like an example that I'm going to use. It's old footage of like people making parts for missiles and like nuclear weapons. And then we get Robert McNamara sitting in front of a camera and he's answering questions about like we kind of get a whole span of things. He tells us 11 different lessons. So it's like Robert McNamara's 11 lessons, and then we get the lessons are spaced evenly throughout the film watching. It's like 2 hours long, hour 43 minutes, I want to say, 45, somewhere around that point. So the lessons are spread evenly kind of around. And so we get our archival footage from different missiles being launched, missiles being made, people like working on them and making them. And we get recent, like for the time, like in 2003, this was recent, like now footage of Robert McNamara being interviewed because we can see he's in an older state of age and he's talking about his 11 lessons, his time as the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and just his life in general. Like he recounts on like back in school when he wanted to be the smartest kid in class to sit at the seat all the way in the front. Like we get it's like very expansive. Like he tells us a lot of different things, which kind of made it more interesting to watch because we kept going back and forth between like hearing him like his voice as an over speaker voice. That was fixing my light. We hear his voice like over footage that's being like played either of we get footage of him back in like the 1960s. We get footage of him being in office as the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and there's actually we get like different recordings of him from the news and just different cameras of him from that time in his life. And we also get there's like a news quote. It was like he was the most controversial man to have this position, or he was in like the most controversial position. He was a very controversial person is what the thing was saying. And then we get different like newspaper clippings about him being the U.S. Secretary of Defense, like I'll say in his position, since I've stated enough that he's the U.S. Secretary of Defense. He was for 7 whole years, which does and doesn't seem like a lot of time. But remember, like presidents can run for like 2 terms, so they're usually in office for 8 years. So that's almost 2 like nowadays presidential terms. So he could have been, some presidents only are there for 4 years, not 4 positions. There was a president that was there for 4 positions, but that was before the rule thing got enacted. But either way, 7 years in a government position, and his position that he was in is like a very long time. Like thinking about it, you're doing like top secret work. He knew different he was informed by the president where different nuclear weapons were, or like how many there were. And like you don't get that just for like working for the US Postal Service. Like this is a very important, high status, high security government job. And so the main thing about documentaries is they're trying to convey truth. Truth is the main thing. Depending on what kind of documentary you're trying to get just a perspective about the truth about how someone's living. You're not really arguing anything. You're just like having a camera There was one documentary we saw as an example was Great Gardens. Like, they're not doing an argument, they're not conducting research to see what they're saying is true, they're just listening to them talk. But it's the truth of how they're living. And like nature documentaries is the truth of how animals live, and there was another documentary example. This man ate only McDonald's for 30 days straight to prove how fast food was bad for you. And he did research by different doctors, and like he went to see different like physicians, and he got like his blood records before and after, and got the calorie counts and how much fat he was eating. That was like a research thing to tell the truth about how bad fast food was. So some are more like trying to convince you of a truth, some are just trying to show you a truth. And with this documentary, with The Fog of War, I feel like it was trying to reveal a truth. More specifically, it was trying to get Robert McNamara to reveal a truth. And full honesty, I'm sitting on my legs right now, so we're gonna sit like this. That should be fun. I can crop it. There we go. We're trying to get him to reveal the truth. But he's a politician. So how are we going to try and get a politician who worked in a very, like, top secret, high security position for 7 years of his life? He worked, like, directly underneath the President of the United States of America. Like, that's the most, like, highest top, like, job you could ever get. So how are we going to get him to reveal truth? Well, one of the ways is that we can hear the interviewer asking him sort of targeted questions when he avoids talking about a certain subject. Like, McNamara is talking about certain things, and we hear the interviewer's voice from behind the camera say, "Didn't we plan on bombing Cuba?" Like, you can hear that very outwardly in, like, near the beginning of the documentary. Because he's not trying to get a rise out of him, he's trying to get the truth out of him. He's trying to get him to stop avoiding certain topics, or just, like, sugarcoating them in a way, or not lying by not telling the whole truth kind of thing. I mean, there are moments where we can totally see he's telling the whole entire truth. You can see it in his eyes when he's, like, reliving certain memories of his own life. I don't know why I did that towards me, but, like, he's living memories of his life in certain, like, moments. You can see when he's talking, you can see it in his eyes, how he says it. That's when you know he's not lying. And there's parts where he gets, like, very emotional. He's, like, pointing directly at the camera, and he's also looking right at the camera, and I'll get to that in a second. But he's pointing right at the camera. You can tell there's moments where, yeah, he's telling the truth. But some other people would watch it and be like, well, maybe he's just learned how to do that, how to have that look in his eyes, because he's been a politician for so long. And they're used to not telling people the whole truth. Do we think a politician has ever told the whole entire truth? No. Especially not, like, I was gonna say the U.S. Secretary of Defense again, but I realized that took too long to say, and then I said it anyways. Like, do you think someone in his position can tell the truth about certain things? The president told him there was, like, thousands of nuclear missiles ready to be launched, like, at any time if someone, like, gets angry and presses a button. He's not gonna go tell that to people, and if anyone asks, he's gonna lie to cover it up. Which, yeah, don't tell people where nuclear weapons don't work in the government. Even then. And there's parts where he's, like, quoting certain people. Like, he quoted, I forget who, but he's, like, quoting different people, and did they tell the truth? We don't know. That's the whole thing. Who's telling the truth and who's not is the main question of this kind of documentary. We get certain parts of the truth from the archival footage, and then different images and, like, recordings of McNamara from when he held office in his position in the 60s. And I do believe that he's telling part of the truth now. But truth is such, like, it's such a word, honestly. There's so many things that I could talk about with truth, but I don't want to take up too much time, since it's not like a fictional film where there's, like, 2 hours of expansive plot that I have to go through. Not have to, but, you know, where I can go through. This is kind of just like, it's real. Like, nonfiction is based on real events, like film types, and then documentaries are literally like, it's people doing real things, or like animals, like if you're watching like a wildlife documentary. Or with these kinds of ones, you're interviewing real people. Like, talking about, like, McNamara, he's talking about parts of his life. He's talking about when he was a child, and then when he worked under the president in his position, and just all the things that he's learned, and he's teaching us, like, these 11 lessons, trying to get us to understand something. And I feel like that's, like, kind of interesting of, like, this type of documentary. And one of the reasons that this type of documentary is so interesting, at least to me, because, you know, I'm a fiction girly all the way, but documentaries are really interesting. But I feel like if you have a day in your life where you're like, I don't want to watch a movie, not really, watch a documentary. You can watch anything on Shark Week, because like I talked about in the Jaws documentary, in the Jaws video, I am a big shark person. Watch a nature documentary, watch ocean, or watch iguanas versus snakes. It's like very like climactic with the music and everything. Or you can watch someone being interviewed, or you can watch someone trying to prove a truth to you, like, or you can watch The Fog of War. It is a watch. You have to sit down for like, you know, an hour and 43 minutes to watch it, but it is a watch. Like, it's like very like intriguing to say. Like, you get to take a glimpse into this man's life when normally you don't get to see anything that happens behind the walls of government at all. And meanwhile, this politician's sitting down and he's talking about his like past life, which is really interesting. And the part that I was going to get on with how he's looking straight into the camera every time is the type of equipment, like the camera equipment that he's being filmed with, is actually really helpful for helping like generate more truth, for more transparency from whoever you're interviewing. Because like we said earlier, politicians are not going to tell excuse me, politicians are not going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth all the time. They have to lie to cover up certain things, or they have to sugarcoat, or just not even mention parts of things. Because that's their job as a politician and just as a government worker. When you know certain information, you kind of can't tell people without creating a panic. Like, imagine if you knew, like, there was, like, how many missiles or something that could just be launched at the press of a button. And it's, like, that's scary. I don't think an average person should know that. Like, I don't think the whole country or world should know that. Otherwise, that'd be chaos. But McNamara knew that because he was told that by someone. I think it was the president at the time. And he obviously couldn't tell anyone. Or he chose not to, which was the very, very smart decision to make. And so, he's just, that's the kind of thing that he's lived with his whole life, or just a majority of his life. He's learned how to, like, disguise truths and not reveal certain things. But that's not what this documentary interview is all about. This is why our interviewer keeps shouting questions from behind the camera to try and get him to talk more. And another thing that he will have more trouble like lying is because the type of camera setup that he's being interviewed with. It's kind of like, it's like how mine is set up in a way. Because like, if I'm looking right here, I'm looking right at myself in my recording. I'm looking here because that's the camera lens. But McNamara had his camera right here, facing right at him. And then we had a little screen right here for him to look at, and that was his live recording of himself talking. And why? Why did we have that kind of setup? Because it's so much harder to lie to yourself than to like another person or a group of people. So we have this camera equipment set up for interviews like this. So that way he's less inclined to cover up a truth. Because when you're sitting in front of yourself being shouted questions at you every so often by someone behind the camera that you can't see, it kind of feels like you're being asked these questions by yourself. Like, it feels like he's looking straight at him, but he's hearing the questions from the interviewer. So it feels like he's getting asked them by the person of himself that he's looking at in the camera. which is actually like really interesting to think about. Like you're sitting there essentially staring straight at yourself, trying not to lie to yourself, or maybe you are. Maybe he was in some parts trying to lie to himself about certain things in his life, because he had admitted that he's made mistakes, and he said like anyone who's a soldier who has fought in a war has made mistakes, and that's kind of true. But he said he's trying to learn from his mistakes and to grow from them and not repeat them again. And maybe that's why he decided to do this interview for this documentary. And I feel like all of that is just a really interesting thing to think about. Is he trying to learn from his mistakes and like finally set the truth free, but he's still being kind of held back by like the part in the back of his brain from what he used to do as a politician, that he's used to just covering up truths and having to lie to the public? Or did he just say yes for this interview for like, oh, whatever, and he's just trying to lie as much as he can? I feel like it's not the second one. Let me know what you think, obviously. I feel like it's more of the first one. Like, he is trying to learn from his mistakes. But it's kind of hard to move on or redevelop from a mindset that you've known or been so much a part of since your whole life, or just a big part of your life. So he's gotta like kind of get away from his politician brain if he's trying to do an interview where he's staring straight at himself answering questions like being told to him by someone he's not directly looking at. It's kind of like sitting in the mirror, honestly, and you're just looking at yourself and you're being asked these questions by a voice and you have to answer them with how you see fit. And I feel like that's like a really interesting thing to think about. This whole documentary was a very interesting like watch. It was cool in a way to like see someone from such a high position in previous government talk about all these things, and all the different like archival footage that we got to see with his voice narrating on top of it what he used to do or about this topic. Like all of these things on top of one another made for like a very interesting watch, like all encompassingly. And I would love for you guys to watch it if you have the chance to, of course. I'm not gonna make you sit down for like a whole 2-hour documentary. At least watch like the first half of it. Like, I watched both halves obviously, but like, I think you should watch at least the first half. And it's very interesting how he speaks to the camera and just the footage that's being shown over top his voice and everything. So I would definitely give The Fog of War a watch if you're into those kind of things, like historical or war documentaries, or like revealing truths and stuff like that. And if you're not into that kind of documentary, you can watch a wildlife documentary. You can watch a perspective documentary like Grey Gardens, just get a glimpse into someone's life, how they live. You can get those little like objective documentaries, like the guy trying to show you how fast food is bad for you by eating only McDonald's for 30 days straight. We watched that little documentary in class. It was crazy to look at the results. I was like very intrigued. I was like, oh my goodness. So every documentary is about truth, but in a different way. Some are trying to convince you of things. Some are trying to just show you something that's true about somebody or about something. And some are trying to reveal truths from other people. That's why we have different interviews about certain things. So documentaries themselves are very interesting, and I definitely recommend watching a documentary every so often. And obviously we love fiction. Take a break from fiction and watch a little documentary. This is definitely a different kind of video than usually, because usually, like I said, we're watching fiction. But like, I kind of like the little change into a documentary. It was very interesting. And I'll give you a little sneak peek into next week's. We're watching, what was it? An Eastern film. And because we're talking about a non-Western audience. Or like non-Western studio filmmaking. I'm so excited because I've always wanted to watch the movie that we're, like this next video that comes out after this one. I'm so excited because I've always wanted to watch the movie for it, is basically what I'm saying, without me jumbling over my words. So, that's your little sneak peek. Oh, I'm so excited. It's on like the creepy, psychologically horror kind of side. That's your other hint. I'm so excited. It's gonna be peak cinema. Alright. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this talk about documentaries very, very interesting. Or at least a little bit interesting. Maybe I've inspired you to go watch Shark Week or to go watch a documentary in general. Well, thank you for watching this video.